Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Transatlantic, or Imperial. The Transatlantic is a XH5 US28. The Imperial part number, or maybe it's global, TH1100-HK1-AL. Transatlantic, it was a company, an importer of Asian manufactured commercial and residential builders hardware for several decades. They were at some point, I think, in the early 2000s, bought by Global. The people at Global took the Global brand, the Transatlantic brand. Now it's under the Imperial brand. I don't know. This is a storefront door Deluxe Hinge replacement kit aluminum finish. So when you purchase this, regardless of the part number, you're going to get two hinges. Sorry. Okay. You get two. They're not identical. One's a top and one's a bottom. The set is non-handed, but one's a top and one's a bottom. And what that means is you'll have the adjusting screw, I think they call this, in one end, and then the spindle or the pin in the other end, and the adjusting screw for the top pivot needs to be at the top of the door, and then for the bottom, it needs to be at the bottom of the unit. And actually, this is the bottom unit here. And how do I know that? Oh, actually, no, this is the top. Forgive me. This is definitely the top. And how I know that is that needs to be at the top. And this, of course, would be attached to your door. And the frame, where I'm holding it, nothing obviously falls out. So we know that they're handed, because if I held on that piece, the one item would come, the other leaf would come apart. So we can kind of, look at the two of them somewhat reasonably together. And, the difference is that they're offset on the opposite side of each other. So, or inset might be a fair way to call it as well. So you'll determine that what side is the top and what side is the bottom, depending on whether you take, the units like this, or if you take them like this. They're completely reversible, except that, well, they don't go this way. They would go this way after you rotate them over, okay? Seemed like a stressed explanation to say that these are non-handed. The adjusting screw has to be at the top for the top and the bottom for the bottom. The rest you'll sort it out. You can't at that point really install it wrong, because you'll quickly realize quickly realize that your door will either slide down or it won't, is the bottom line. Okay. Now let's continue the tour of what else is in the box. Obviously a pair of these hinges. By the way, aluminum, and this is in a clear anodized finish, and also dark bronze they're available in. Okay, these have a tremendous weight capacity. I think it's 600 pounds, which is outrageous for any sort of aluminum storefront door you're going to hang on it. I believe it's in the installation instructions, and we'll get to that. You are going to get 4 shims. I don't know why you're going to need 4. You will very likely need 2, but there are 2 per hinge. Maybe I'm missing something, but I think you would only use 1 shim. And you may not use it at all. We'll discuss why. You're going to get 4 self-adhesive covers. That you need 4 of, because after it's all said and done, you're going to apply the cover right over the face of the head of the screws. So that it's going to look like that, basically. Okay, nice and clean. That's how that's going to go. You're also then going to get fasteners. There are one-way screws here. One-way screws are not a problem to put in. They are a problem to take out. Be sure that you're drilling right where you want it. I've tried to remove these screws. It's dreadful, so don't get into that. There's an Allen wrench that will allow you to adjust that adjustment screw that's here. And I don't know yet what it does, but I'm quite convinced that it must simply allow you to tailor the position of the door in relationship to the frame. So there are some documents down below. There are installation instructions, product brochure, and technical drawing. Let's switch to the screen view where we can take a look at all three of those. Okay, so here is the item that we are looking at. Not much to see here, but let's zoom in a bit, take a closer look. Okay, for entrance doors, for storefront doors, universal fit on trim line aluminum doors. That just means narrow style would be my guess. Narrow style, medium style, wide style. Enhances any trim line aluminum entrance. Screws are not exposed as a result of pressure-sensitive aluminum cover strips. High security, non-exposed hinge pins. Sealed inside housing cannot be reached, removed, or tampered with. That's going to be because you have one hinge up and one hinge down. That's going to prevent the pins from being removed because they're not removable at all. You can't pull the pins out, removed or tampered with. You can't remove the screws if you tore away the pressure-sensitive aluminum cover strips. Okay, they're one-way screws. You might think that you can take them out, but again, I've tried. They do not yield their secrets. Can be installed in 20 minutes without any hassle. I do not contend any sort of problem with that at all. Once you have the door shimmed and positioned and you have your hinge and you mark the holes and you drill the holes and then install them, I don't know that I would say 20 minutes, but you will start to finish. An hour would be quite adequate to complete a job. And then subsequent, if it's your first one, then subsequent installations would be faster. Solves common door problems, sagging, dragging, warping. Also helps prevent future problems. Instant adjustment to fine tolerances, sure. Door can be raised or lowered to fine tolerances with just the use of a simple Allen set screw feature on that governs a vertical adjustment screw, like I had thought. Smooth bearing action, self-lubricating pin. Bearings loaded with pin. Bearing loaded pin rotates. Bearing loaded pin rotates. Sure it does. Yeah, I can see that easily. It's quite clearly present. I will show that to you at the end of the video. A very large bearing, in fact. Let's see here now. No wearing surfaces in stores supported by case-hardened pin and enclosed anti-friction bearings. It would be if you had two, naturally. This is a customer-supplied photo showing us what this hinge looks like. Okay. Two hinges. 2 1/8 of an inch thick shim plates. I don't know why, again, there are 4 here. You won't need 4. 4 cover strips, 12 screws, and then an Allen wrench, along with installation instructions. Okay, so now let's start with the installation instructions first. And they are here. There's a link down below this video to these. This is a scan of the paperwork that's literally in the box. You'll get 2 pieces. This is what they will look like. So for flush or 1/8 of an inch offset doors, so what that really should read is inset. Doors are either flush or they're inset. The inset is not necessarily an 1/8 of an inch at all times. In aluminum storefront, that's a very common inset. So what we're driving at here is you can have your door where the door is literally flush. This is all flush. You could also have your door where it's inset, that there's a dimension between here and here. Now, these are made for 1/8 of an inch inset. Very typical, very common for aluminum storefront, as is a flush installation. Hollow metal doors, not that you would use this on a hollow metal door, but you could, I suppose. Those are inset, always inset. It's about 3/32 of an inch. Now, very commonly where I see this material installed is a restaurant, and they have a series of folding doors that are like, somewhat like stacking aluminum doors, and they will very often have these surface mount hinges on them, keeping those panels together. So very simple and straightforward. Okay, so when you scroll down in the installation instructions is where they're going to show you what it needs to look like for an 1/8 of an inch offset or inset. versus flush. If you were to study that, they are trying to show that the door is inset ever so slightly. Okay, you are most certainly not going to need the shim for this, because the hinge plate, the hinges automatically are arranged where the leafs are not parallel with each other. It would only be for the flush installation where you're going to need to toss the shim plate in underneath that area necessary, because you've got an offset leaf. Okay, so let's zoom this out just a little bit. Can be successfully used on all types of doors up to 500 pounds, not 600. Remove the old hinges. Place the door in the opening. Be sure to allow for proper clearance all around the door. I've installed continuous hinges. You get the door in the opening and you shim it. You place shim stock under the door on each side. You make sure that the door is in position and cannot be moved. And it's also at the proper inset as well. Once you have it thoroughly positioned, you can then mark your holes basically. But for 1/8 of an inch offset door installation, do not use the shim. There's already an 1/8 of an inch offset built into these hinges. Lay one hinge in place so the hinge adjustment screw must face up on the top hinge and down on the bottom hinge. For flush, you place the shim underneath the 1/8 inch offset leaf, but always on the jamb. They will always go on the jamb. Position of adjustment screw must be face up, pointed up towards the top hinge and down on the bottom. Use the hinge set as a template. Don't remove the hinge leaves apart. Place it on the material, including the shim if you need it, for a flush installation. Align the vertical axis of pivoting over the margin between the door and frame, probably 1/8 of an inch. Mark your holes, but only the center hole at this time. No need to mark all the holes, and I would suggest that you not. Drill a 15/64 hole through the center hole on the door and frame. Use the one-way screws that are included. Once you are sure that everything is positioned correctly, mark your other 8 holes and then install your screws. Finally, peel away the backing from the cover strips and press into place. There is a... I don't see the cover strips are not referred to here. Not anywhere. So that's the installation instructions, but we've already shown them on the camera. So now the adjustment. When we switch back to the camera view, we'll go over that as well. There's now also a link to a document called Product Brochure. Now this is out of the old Transatlantic catalog. This catalog goes back, this section goes back decades. And, okay, D23, Super XH5 Hinge Kit, page D23. Whoop. Way too far. Oh, that's awful. This is the I section. Okay, it's still in here. I-23 is what it's called. So here is the original product catalog for this. I don't know how original it is, but this would certainly go back probably to the 1990s, if not earlier. There was a very, very helpful customer service rep at Transatlantic by the name of Sandy. She worked for Transatlantic for many, many years. They were in Philadelphia. She moved and retired to Arizona, but still worked. But at that time, the business, was obviously winding down. They were, positioning to sell or whatever the case was. And then she retired. Very, very helpful, Sandy was, from Transatlantic. Okay, then we have the technical drawing. And this, I don't know where this originated from. We obviously obtained this somewhere, but does show you, the position of what the frame or jamb side would look like when you have a flush installation. If it's an 1/8 of an inch inset, pull that out. This is going to come down an 1/8 of an inch, and you're in good shape. Okay. Now let's switch back to the camera view and wrap up this video. Okay, now on those cover strips, that's just a peel away protective backer that's on here, and I think you're meant to grab that and peel that off and back. And that will cover it up, make that look nice and neat, I would say. Be a little patient there. Now, the Allen wrench is in here, and I'm going to poke that out of the end of the package a little bit for the purpose of not only demonstrating its use, but letting you know what size it is. Might be 7/64ths, I'm just taking a guess. 7/60? No, it's got to be more than that. No, I might be right. 0.193. 0.193. Let's take a look. 1 divided by 64 times 14. Did I say 7/30 seconds? That's what I meant to say. No, it's not that. Maybe 12. So the answer is very likely 3/16, but it's because 3/16 would be 0.1875. But what's dawned on me is that this is probably not imperial. This is made in Asia, so that's very likely a metric size. So that is the size that we're dealing with. 0.194. 0.194. Would a 3/16 work? Yeah, I don't have one here at my desk to stick in there and see, but nonetheless. So that wrench will go in, and you can rotate that. And as let's start over. I've got that backed out to the point where it's not, the leaves are touching each other, basically. As I rotate it clockwise, you can see now that I'm driving that up. And it's not a lot of adjustment, but there's a fair amount to it. Okay, it's stopping right there, by the way, which, it's 3/32 of an inch adjustment, so it's not quite an eighth of an inch, but it's pretty reasonable in what it is, actually. So we'll dress that down to where it was originally. Okay. Now, that bearing, it's right there. Captured in oil. That load is going to sit right on top of there, and that's how that's going to obviously carry the weight of what it is that you're working on. Okay. The shim ought to be obviously an eighth of an inch thick. My caliper tells me it's 0.116, so almost an eighth. And I know that there may have been something else I said we would check on, but I do not recall what it is. I don't think I took basic dimensional properties of this. Oh, I know what I wanted to also review. Overall width of the hinge. Looks like it's about 3 inch, just shy on that. Overall height, 5 inch. From the face of the door to the center line of the pivot, okay, 3/4 inch. I mean, it obviously appears to be ever so slightly greater than that. But it's also got everything to do with how I'm holding the piece. So I'm sure that they would classify this as 3/4 inch. So your pivot point is really important to know in the sense of where it is laterally or horizontally when you're templating your door closer and other hardware like an overhead stop. But that pivot point is 3/4 from the face of the door. Very typical, very common. You're not going to have any problem with that when it comes to other hardware. This would be good for a retrofit situation. I do see them installed as new hinges when the door system incorporates the design, but it's also very likely an elegant way to simply bring back to working order pivots or hinges that have failed on an aluminum door. What I don't like about aluminum doors is that all those hinge plates or the reinforcements for pivots, that's all just mechanically fastened, whereas like in a hollow metal door, you're going to have everything welded together. So plates become loose. Welds break in hollow metal, there's no question. But this pivot may be a preferred alternative to a full continuous aluminum geared hinge. You might want to consider that. It is slightly less expensive. Actually, no, it's forgive me, it's going to be about half of the cost of a continuous hinge and a lot less screws, and it's got the load capacity. So this might be a really elegant way. Your customer might just like that a lot. Okay. Now below this video is a link to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the transatlantic products, which is global, and if you know the name global, you'll see it on a door closer body. Transatlantic, global, and then imperial. Imported builders hardware, mostly commercial, lock sets, exit devices, hinges, door closers, accessory storefront hardware like this as well. I would take a look at the catalog. You'd want to go to the manufacturer's page in our site and pull up the name Imperial. There'll be more than one, but it'll be the one that's not tools. It'll be the one that's hardware. So let me just see if, let me tell you what the full name would be if you're going to actually search for that. It would be Imperial USA is what it would be called. Imperial USA. Okay. I wouldn't hesitate to use this, not at all. This would be a breeze to install, should be no problem, and give that old door lots of new life. Any questions on the transatlantic DH-XH5 and a US28 finish or any other transatlantic, global, or imperial product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.